When taking a look at the 8 to 14 day temperature and precipitation outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, not only is it expected to be more likely cooler than normal for the majority of the northern United States, but we're also expecting to see more precipitation than usual, which of course does raise the possibility that we could see a winter storm develop out of these conditions. Now, based on what some of the more reliable computer models have been saying, such as the European model, it is leaning a little bit more to the idea that by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend, we will see a small winter storm move through the northern Midwest as well as the Northeast. And the past several initializations of the European model have been very persistent on this idea, which makes it a little bit more likely we're going to see at least some sort of winter storm by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend. The GFS model has been a little bit more aggressive with the ridging and a little bit more warm air, which is mainly relegating the snowfall more so right around the extreme northern portions of the Midwest and not really necessarily bringing that snowfall to the Northeast. However, we also need to keep in mind that the European model tends to be a little bit more reliable when we're talking about a forecast that's around over 7 days out or so. So I will still lean a little bit more to what the European model is stating, as well as what the Climate Prediction Center is forecasting when it comes to temperature, which does raise the possibility that we will at least see some sort of winter storm in the Midwest and Northeast, as I will at least say it's more likely at this point, because obviously climatologically speaking, it is already fairly likely during the month of November, late November into early December, we see snowfall in these areas. Now, in determining who exactly will receive snowfall out of this, we're going to take a look at all the computer models to really determine that question, but more likely than not, we should at least see some snowfall in those areas. So here's a quick look at what the European model is forecasting over the next few days and of course by next week. So if we were to continue to move forward, we see that for the most part, most of the United States is under warmer temperatures as the jet stream is relegated a little bit further northward of the Canadian border, as there's not really snowfall anywhere, at least within the next 24 to 48 hours outside of maybe the higher elevations of the interior Northeast. But continuing to move forward, we do see that it's expected to stay warm, but we do eventually a small trough should move through the Pacific Northwest, and it should bring snowfall over portions of the higher elevations of the Rocky Mountains, and eventually this should develop into a more potent mid-latitude low pressure system, where we eventually see that bow echo look, which definitely represents that this storm is intensifying, and we do see some snowfall in the northern portions of North Dakota and into South Dakota and Minnesota as well, which you should, in this scenario, expect a range right around 3 to 5 inches of snowfall. But I wouldn't be surprised in localized areas it could be even more. And taking a look at the forecast hour as well, there's still that possibility that, hey, maybe this winter storm could be stronger than you'd expect. The GFS model is expecting a fairly similarly strength storm, but it is a little bit stronger, and we do see that the low pressure system is a little bit further northward, as it does intensify this storm system in a different way compared to the European model, where it does expect a second low pressure system thanks to a stronger jet stream dip to develop just to the east of this original low pressure system, which does bring a more enhanced area of snowfall right over the northern portion of Michigan. It's not like that in the European model's case, where the European model just expects this storm system to be the primary low pressure system, and in fact, based on the latest 18Z run, we don't see much snowfall at all right around North Dakota and Minnesota. So what I could say in those areas, you're still more likely to receive snowfall, but it's still uncertain really how strong it is. It really all depends on how strong this jet stream dip will be, but thankfully it won't be much longer till we get a more certain forecast, because we're only around 5 to 4 days out. So while there's still uncertainty, I'd expect, especially within the next day or two, we should get a better idea of what's to come for much of the northern Midwest. But anyways, moving beyond that point, that's when our area of concern when it comes to snowfall could impact the northern Midwest and Northeast in the more long-term future. Going back to the 12Z run, since it shows a more long-term forecast, we see that another upper level low should move through the northern Midwest, and this does. And as of right now, the European model is expecting mainly a smaller Clipper system moving through. This would bring a broad area of 3 to 5 inches of snowfall to places like Minneapolis, extending into Milwaukee, going south to Chicago, and then going into Detroit as well, and much of Michigan. You should expect a general area of maybe 1 to 3 to 3 to 5 inches of snowfall if this scenario were to be correct. And then we see that snowfall does move into the Northeast as well, where New Jersey, northern Pennsylvania, and much of upstate New York, and even portions of New England get involved with maybe around 1 to 3 inches of snow as well. So you might be thinking that this is relatively weak and this might not be anything to be concerned about, and at least as of right now, it's not anything to be concerned about because this forecast is still very far into the future. However, it could be something to be concerned about if this forecast not only persists but maybe shows a storm system that could be stronger, like what the 0Z run was forecasting, where we saw a much more potent low pressure system move through the Midwest, where we wouldn't be talking about 1 to 3 inches of snowfall in a scenario like this, but more like 5 to 8 inches of snowfall, and maybe even a little bit more in localized areas, because this low pressure system is definitely stronger than what the most recent 12Z run is showing, as this forecast obviously will likely go back and forth over the next few days since it is a very long-term forecast. However, even the previous 0Z run took a fairly similar track to what this current initialization of the European model is showing, which could lean towards the idea that, hey, maybe a scenario like this is going to happen by the time we approach the Thanksgiving weekend and the first week of December. And we see more snowfall definitely in the Northeast as well. So still a lot to unfold for this storm system to have a little bit more strength. I think it would need a little bit more ridging just to the east of it, just to enhance that instability, because the thing with the current 12Z run of the European model is that while there is enough cold air right around northern Midwest and northern Northeast, there isn't necessarily enough instability to really fuel this storm system, as this ridge is a little bit too weak. It isn't bringing a strong southerly flow, and it isn't creating enough lift because there's enough cold air but not enough warm air interacting with that warm air with that cold air. So there isn't going to be enough lift that's going to bring that moisture, bring a little bit more moisture to this storm, like you'd expect, or a lot of that Gulf of Mexico moisture up further northward. So we're going to need to see a bit more ridging out of this, and of course it's still too far out to say for certain if that will be the case. I'll definitely keep you guys updated. In terms of what the GFS model is forecasting, like I said earlier, it's expecting the ridging to be much stronger, so mainly relegates the snowfall to the extreme northern portions of the Midwest. But what's interesting also is that it does bring the snowfall to the areas further southward into Rocky Mountain ranges, where we're talking about all these areas further southward, the higher elevations of Arizona, New Mexico, of course Colorado, Utah, and Nevada, and the higher elevations of California get involved. We're seeing a much more lopsided storm where the snowfall is mainly relegated to the extreme northwestern portions, while the Northeast and the eastern United States in general misses out on a lot of it, like places like Chicago, of course New York City. So there's still a pretty big difference between the two most reliable computer models. The European model is a computer model to lean a little bit more towards, since it's a little bit better when it comes to long-term forecasts, but we can't completely disregard the GFS model either. So once we get a bit more agreement between these two computer models, we could say for certain who's going to receive snowfall off of this and exactly how much and how powerful it is, but it's still a little bit too far out to say. But what I could say with certainty is that there will at least be some sort of snowstorm moving through the northern Midwest and Northeast by the time we approach Thanksgiving weekend, and it's just a matter of who exactly it'll impact, and of course how strong this storm will be, and that still has yet to be seen. We're gonna need to see the computer models show a little bit more agreement. When taking a look at the CFS weekly forecasts, we of course see it's likely to be much cooler than normal, which also supplements the idea that we're more likely going to see a winter storm moving through the Midwest and Northeast. So stay tuned for more updates. I'll definitely keep you guys updated for any sort of track changes when it comes to the forecast. So definitely stay tuned for that over the next few days. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more winter season forecast videos, and I hope you guys all have a great day.